The Holy Gospel according to John, the 11th chapter, beginning with the first verse. Again, as has been the case for the third week in a row, this gospel is so long that I invite everyone to be seated. And let me begin with a couple of personal comments. Trinity's church family experienced a couple of funerals this past week, which has made our gospel very timely, as it takes up the story of Lazarus, our Lord's late arrival, and the untimely death of his dear friend, with mourners gathered while Lazarus lay in the tomb for 4 days. It's become apparent to me over the course of almost 40 years of pastoral ministry that grief is unavoidably the underside of love. The stronger our love, the deeper our grief for the sadness that flows from the sense of loss that death inflicts. I'm not trying to depress you, but simply to set the stage for our gospel reading, where friends and family have been at the home of Mary and Martha for 4 days, mourning the tragic passing of a dear friend, untimely taken and now gone. John writes, "Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, which was the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed our Lord with expensive perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent Jesus a message to let him know, 'Lord, he whom you love is ill.' And when Jesus heard it, he said, 'This sickness is not unto death. It will lead rather to the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it.'" Jesus loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus. So after staying 2 days longer in the place where he was, he told his disciples that they should head back to Judea, near Jerusalem. This alarmed the disciples because tensions with Jewish leaders were growing stronger. The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, Jewish leaders in Jerusalem were just now trying to stone you. Are you going there again?" But Jesus insisted that he needed to head back because, as he said, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, and I need to be there to awaken him." Well, the disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, someone else will surely wake him up." Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I'm glad I wasn't there, so that you may believe." Let's get going. When Jesus arrived, Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. This means that friends, family, and folks from the community were showing their support by grieving together. Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away. And many friends, including their Jewish friends from Jerusalem, had come to offer Mary and Martha comfort and consolation as they grieved the loss of their brother. Now, let me say this. When my grandmother died, my father's mother, back in 1964, my father had to go back to New York, to Brooklyn, which was about 2.5 hours from where we lived in Connecticut, to be with his family, to sit Shiva, a Jewish custom that required a week-long period of grieving, 7 days of sitting in one home to receive visitors offering comfort and consolation as they came to share their sympathies. People took more time to grieve back then. In our culture now, this time for grieving gets squeezed into a shorter and shorter time frame. Hardly any of our grieving actually gets processed before it's time to move on, to get on with our lives. The thing is, though, our hearts remind us that our sense of loss is not so easily resolved. Other cultures call this America's sense of punctuality, referring not so much to being on time, but to America's sense of being governed by the clock. Everything fitting into clearly defined boxes of duration, as if to say this much time and then let's stay on time. Matters of the heart, however, operate with their own sense of time and duration. So, sitting Shiva, so to speak, had begun when Mary and Martha, well, they heard that Jesus had just about arrived. John continues. So Martha got up and went to meet Jesus while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will listen to your prayer and respond by giving you whatever you ask." And Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha replied, of course, we all know that the dead will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." But Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. They who believe in me, though they die, yet shall they live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the promised Messiah, the Son of God." When she said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here, and he's calling for you." So Mary got right up, kind of startling her friends who were sitting with her. And she left quickly to meet Jesus. Her friends got up too to follow her, since they thought she might be going to the tomb to grieve. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved, and he asked, "Where have you laid him?" They said, "Lord, come and see." So there they were, filled with tears of grief, and Jesus wept. Everyone said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Well, the grieving was so great that you could feel it growing as they approached the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha looked concerned, and she said to him, "Lord, the stench of death is already in the air because he's been dead 4 days." And Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that I am the resurrection and the life? And that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I know that you always hear me. But I say this for the sake of everyone listening, so that they may believe that you sent me." And when Jesus said this, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" And Lazarus came out. The dead man got up and came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, burial cloth, and his face wrapped in a clean linen cloth. So Jesus said to them, "Unbind him, let him loose, set him free." Many of the Jews who had come to be with Mary saw what Jesus did, and they too believed in him. The Gospel of our Lord.